The 2016 Don't Breathe was probably one of the creepiest and scariest films that I had seen in quite some time. It actually just viscerally made me ill and had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. So seeing that the same folks are coming back and making the Don't Breathe 2 got me excited. So I'm giving my thoughts on my review right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. I have not been so torn about a movie in quite some time. There are a lot of things that I really like about Don't Breathe too. One of the biggest things is that this just feels a lot more heartfelt. Like this is a there is an underlying story that is happening here that deals with family you were born into versus the family that you've been sort of taken in by, and it's a tit for tat yin and yang, and it sort of deals with that in a weird, twisted way. I won't give away spoilers, but it deals with that type of stuff in a weird way, and I think it overall gives a sort of satisfying conclusion for that. You have two co-leads really, the blind man played by Stephen Lang, and then the young lady Phoenix, sort of are acting as 1A and 1B of the leads here, which is good to an extent because they sort of get into my troubles with the film and why I'm bothered. But it's good that there's a 1B to the film if 1A is your lead protagonist. It's definitely violent. It's very entertaining. This feels more like an action thriller than it does suspense horror, as that first one did. That sort of becomes a revenge film, like something happens, an impetus happens, and then this person has to go back to sort of reclaim that. And so you're kind of seeing this movie through the eyes, no pun intended, but you're seeing this through the eyes of the blind man, and he is your sort of beacon for this movie, which is also a bit troubling, and I'll get into that in a bit. I think if you have not seen the first Don't Breathe, I think you'll probably enjoy this movie more, and you'll feel more empathy for all the characters that you're supposed to feel empathetic to. Um, the big issue, the big elephant in the room that I have is that if you've seen Don't Breathe 1, the blind man, and they even sprinkle that and say that in here in this film, but the blind man is not a good person. And in this film, they create sort of levels or give other people uh, layers to their criminality. There are organ donors and organ harvesters and criminals and people who are breaking and entering and try to reclaim stuff. And I think with the first one, while those kids were doing breaking and entering, you just thought it was some young punk kids. They try to break and enter, and you're like, well, trying to mess with this guy, and it sort of goes left. And you're like, he's protecting his home, so yeah, he's a bad guy, but there's a morality clause. And then the end, that third act of that first Don't Breathe comes in, and you're like, the blind man's just an outright rapist, and he's trying to inseminate young girls for his pleasure because of a lost child that he has. I don't know what world it would ever be okay with the levels of crime, no matter what you do. Rob a bank, set people on fire, kill people, especially in a horror world. Killing people is sort of like, yeah, that makes sense. Rape is up there with the point where you're like, yeah, you can't come back from that. So no matter how well the story is written, how empathetic you want me to feel about the blind man, there are moments where you put him in peril, and I'm kind of just sitting there like, well, he earned this. He's not a good man. This dude's a rapist, so I'm kind of okay with him getting his ass whooped. If he dies, he dies. You definitely get the Russian from Rocky, like, he dies, he dies. Like, I'm okay with it. And so it's a weird thing where I'm like, this is all shot well. This is a great looking action sequence. This is all done perfectly well. But at the end of the day, using this guy as your sort of quasi protagonist while you still have Phoenix on the other side, and that is sort of your beacon of hope, this guy's trash. And poor Phoenix, when you get to the set, anybody that she is supposed to care for is a terrible human being. And so it's weird that we get sort of a climax of this where, when everything is said and done, she sort of sides with the person who has sort of absconded her. But we all know that this dude's a filthy man. Filthy, filthy man. And it's very hard that as much as everything is going right with the script here. This is a much tighter, script-wise, tighter film because there's more things that happen. I just enjoy that first film more because I'm seeing this and I'm using a different set of people sort of as my viewpoint, whereas I'm using the blind man as my viewpoint is just a terrible, terrible idea. Stephen Lang does great as the blind man. Like he feels physically imposing. Again, you believe him being able to quasi sort of be Daredevil, if you will. All of that works. The story tries its best to make us believe and feel like there's some sort of heartfeltness to us, but we have already seen him as a monster. So back to what I said at the beginning, if you've seen Don't Breathe 1, it's very hard to kind of get on board on the train with anything that is sort of happening with him being an old man taking care of a kid. If you see just this film, it becomes a little bit more believable. And while he has said things, it is different to verbally say, I'm a bad man, I am a killer, I have murdered people, I have raped people. Just the verbiage of that is bad. We as an audience on this world have seen it and have seen it go down horribly. So it is hard for me to put my heart on the sleeve for that. So that's where this film leads a thing because the scares and the suspense don't have as much weight for me because I don't care about him in the manner that I cared about those kids trying to break into his place in the first one. All in all, it was good to kind of go back to this road to see that character. I just wish that while it was understandable to do something completely different than a house invasion, and the script itself is good, using the blind man as your beacon just makes this film it sputters a lot. So on my scale of once is enough, play it again, Sam, or give me a time stone so I never have to think about this film again. It's not a time stone because I actually do think this is a good movie. It just has issues because of how we're doing it. So this is definitely going to be a once is enough. I won't, I can't, I can recommend this to people who have not seen Don't Breathe 1. If you've seen Don't Breathe 1, there is a huge just issue built into the DNA of this film that it can't avoid in the way that this is written, the way that the story is done. And I would tell people, especially people who may have triggers, probably should avoid this. That's it. What did you guys think about Don't Breathe 2? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere that plays podcasts. We are currently in another run of the Marvel pair-ups. This time we're going to be taking the What If animated series from Marvel on Disney Plus and pairing that with these non-MCU or non-canon films throughout history to kind of use an excuse to go back to alternate timelines, if you will. So you can check that out here with our guest host, Jamie Jerick, whenever we go ahead and throw those out. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.